If you travel on London's modern subsurface trains, the S-Dock, either in the city in Zone 1, in the suburban towns of Zone 6, or way out in Zone 9, it can be a rather pleasant experience than London's deep tube lines, as you have access to transverse seating, wheelchair areas, and air conditioning. It is a charming way to get across town, but when you approach the City of London on any subsurface train, it can get somewhat clunky, in this area known as Aldgate Junction, and I'm here to explain all of it. Aldgate Junction is the confluence area for all four subsurface lines in the City of London, those being the Circle, District, Hammersmith and City, and Metropolitan lines. But before we get into the actual junction itself, some quick history about the two stations in the area of the junction. The first Aldgate station opened in 1876 with a train shed that still exists to this day. The extension down to Tower Hill and Mansion House was completed between 1882 and 1884, completing the Circle Line. In the same year, Aldgate East Station opened, but this is not the same one as the current station. It was served by both the Metropolitan and District Railways, with Met trains continuing onto the East London Line until 1941, when Aldgate became the official terminus. No major changes were made to both stations, and yes, there is that exception which I'll explain later, but let's add a bit of context. The only major change to both stations was that a new station building to Aldgate Station was erected. This one was designed by C.W. Clark and opened in 1926, and is actually the one that exists today. So now we've covered the history, let's tackle this mess of a junction. This is an approximate layout of the junction I drew. The lines in blue are up lines, that being towards the City of London, and the lines in red are the down lines, that being away from the City of London. The lines in grey and green are just connecting tracks or crossovers. You will notice that Aldgate Station is situated in the middle of a large triangle, which acts as the junction itself, because there are three sides, and the total area of this triangle is around 86,000 meters squared. Aldgate East, meanwhile, is located at one of the triangle's points. All of the up and down lines have the same scenario for the entire time at Aldgate, except for one at the south of Aldgate. When you're traveling on this track from Tower Hill on a District Line train, you're still heading towards the city, but when it gets to the junction, the track turns east, and therefore the track is now going away from the city. Now let me show you the routes each line takes. First of all, the Hammersmith and City line departs from Liverpool Street and approaches Aldgate Station, but then it uses the northern set of tracks leading to Aldgate East. This is the only time the H&C have dedicated tracks of their own. The Circle line also comes from Liverpool Street and then diverges off the H&C tracks to use the outer platforms of Aldgate Station, and then continues onto the District Line tracks to Tower Hill. The Met line comes from the north and terminates at Aldgate using the inner platforms of the station. Finally, the District Line comes from Aldgate East and uses the southern pair of tracks going away from Aldgate East. They pass meters away from Aldgate Station and finally merge with the Circle line to Tower Hill. Looking at all of the lines at once, the number of lines serving both stations is balanced, with two at each, but with all lines independent of each other when reaching the junction itself. Because all of these junctions are flat, it can cause delays with each line. For instance, if a train breaks down on one line, it can cause chaos for the others. Both the H&C and District lines pass meters away from Aldgate Station itself on the way to Aldgate East, and if you stand at either end of the station, you can see the respective line not stop at the station, and if you're on either train, you can have that feeling for yourself. This is because the Met and District lines are at their closest point on the network to each other, but don't actually connect. It's also the reason why both stations are separated by a 5-minute walk, and it does have a purpose, to allow people to change between the Met and District lines, but it is an inconvenience as people would have to exit the station, walk on street level, and re-enter the other station, which is a time-consuming process. In my opinion, an underpass or a walkway connecting both stations would suffice, as people would not need to leave the paid area of the station, but it would be a very expensive thing to build. Previously, Aldgate East Station was actually much closer to Aldgate in the middle of the H&C tracks. This was the original Aldgate East Station, and it lasted until 1938 when the current station opened. It was closed because of the sharp curve District Line trains had to take when entering the station. The station's old footbridge still exists today, and the place of where the old District Line track was is now a services area. The two outer platforms are always used by Circle Line trains, and they only stop here to allow anyone going from Aldgate to Tower Hill directly without using Aldgate East. The two inner platforms are exclusively for terminating Met trains, and it's also one of a few places on the tube where a line terminates in Zone 1. There are two crossovers at the northern end to allow Met trains to use either platform when terminating, and as it's a terminus, people have to figure out the first train leaving from the station, which isn't always easy. Both platforms at Aldgate East are simultaneously used by both the District and H&C lines, and can be useful to interchange if you're still heading further east. Changing to the other platform from the eastbound is weaker as the station is not step-free, along with Aldgate, but it can be useful in case of disruptions. For instance, if the Circle Line is suspended, then everyone can use the H&C to Aldgate East, then change to the other platform for a District Line train to continue their journey around the circle. Now let's talk about service frequency. Generally at both stations, trains are every 2 to 6 minutes for each line, but sometimes it can be very inconsistent, with Circle and H&C trains every 10 minutes, and sometimes trains can even change what line they're traveling on. This would mean passengers have to be vigilant for any announcements. However, it's unlikely it will happen, but with delays on any line, it is common. Now let's take a look at some lore and a few secrets around the junction and the area. First off, there is a bus station located opposite the station building, serving about 5 bus routes, but the individual stops are positioned on the right of the station, making it an inconvenient walk. During the 7/7 bombings of 2005, one of the bombs was detonated on board a C-stop train at the northern end of the junction, claiming 7 people. There is a plaque in the station's ticket hall commemorating the attack, and keep in mind this was 4 years after the 9/11 attacks in America were coordinated. Aldgate was also featured in the Sherlock Holmes story, The Adventure of the Bruce Partington Plans, where the body of a junior clerk is found lying on the tracks outside of Aldgate, unknown if he was dead, with stolen plans of the Bruce Partington submarine. But this poses a larger conspiracy. How did the body fall onto the tracks in the first place? And how didn't he have a ticket? Well, the body was placed on the carriage before the train arrived via a house window above the Met, and then the body fell as the train jolted over the points. Outside the station, there is even the nice St. Botolph Church and an ornate police postbox. Keep heading west, and you'll eventually get to a seating area known as Mitre Square. This square is famous for what happened all the way back in autumn of 1888. Back then, the East End, and especially Whitechapel, was a murky slums area where unemployed people took refuge. This was also a place for crime, and murder was the key one, as a series of them took place here over the course of 11 months. Out of the 12 destitute women who were murdered here, only 5 were canonical to the serial killer called Jack the Ripper, and one of these bodies was 45-year-old Catherine Eddowes. A constable by the name of Edward Watkins discovered the body during one of his rotations, lying in Mitre Square. During that day, she got bailed from Bishopsgate Police Station and came upon the unknown suspect at Mitre Square, where she was finally killed at 1:45 a.m. Overall, if you want to see plenty of S-Dock trains in action, Aldgate is certainly for you, as there is so much history and potential left in the area to discover and make notes about, and they all tie together with this one complex junction.